We're going to discuss personal roles and responsibilities, which is chapter 9 from your text. Just like all previous, so we'll discuss the learning objectives. List the roles and responsibilities of individual responders and their relationship to the overall safety and health program. List the roles and responsibilities of the supervisors and their relationship to the overall safety and health. List the roles and responsibilities of the emergency services management team and their relationship to the overall safety and health program. List the roles and responsibilities of the incident commander and his or her relationship to the overall safety and health program. List the roles and responsibilities of the safety program manager and his or her relationship to the overall safety and health program. List the roles and responsibilities of the incident safety officers and their relationship to the overall safety and health program. And finally, list the roles and responsibility of the safety committee and its relationship to the overall safety and health program. What I'd first like to do is have you pause this, go in and reread page 195, and that is the case study in your book. Okay, welcome back. Now, reading that case study is kind of hard to determine exactly what happened. Obviously, we know that the firefighter threw up in his face piece, which led to the future problems that ultimately cost him his life. Now, reading that, I can only surmise that one of two things happened: that this firefighter was sick and then vomited later into his mask, or that the firefighter's mask didn't seal correctly and that he inhaled some smoke which caused him to vomit. Vomiting into the mask isn't an occurrence that I've seen very often. I can't even recall it right now, but I think both of those issues can be resolved. And again, I feel horrible that this firefighter lost his life, and I'm not trying to judge them, but what I get from reading that is that one of two things, like I said, is that he was sick prior to the fire, and that because he was sick that he vomited. One thing is that a lot of times firefighters will try to power through the shift, and what I mean by that is, look, they're sick and they'll just go, okay, I'm just going to go lay down and I'll try to make it through the rest of the shift. If you're sick, you need to go home. You never know that you have that house fire, or you may even have that wildland fire where you could be gone for days. So if you're sick, you need to go home and use your sick days. The only other thing, if it wasn't an illness, the only other thing I can surmise is that somehow smoke got in his mask. Either his mask wasn't fitting, or that somehow he got a leak. And again, we're talking about safety here. If that's the problem, hopefully it wasn't a result of someone not doing what they were supposed to do. You need to make sure that your equipment works, always. This is your lifeline, that breathing apparatus. I don't really see anything else wrong with their tactics. Yes, they went in to do a search without a hose line. We would prefer to have a hose line, but that's not always the case. We do searches. We do searches without hose lines. A lot of times we'll take a drop bag with us, so we can find our way out. But it's not uncommon for that to happen. So, and again, they were going to rescue what they believed was a person trapped. We'll move on from there, but just think about those two things. The introduction. You need to understand the various roles, all of the members that I just stated before of the organization and what they play. You need to understand that responsibility for safety extends to everyone, from that brand new probationary firefighter to the fire chief. We all have to be in this together. This is a dangerous job. It's always going to be dangerous. Firefighters are always going to lose their life and be injured, but we want to try to cut those numbers down and to prevent the things that are preventable from happening. And again, many different people might have responsibility for one or more of the components. You all have to work together. And basically, we'll discuss these as the life safety initiatives 1, 2, 3, and 4 are linked to various roles of the safety program. So again, we'll talk about these life safety initiatives. Life Safety Initiative 1, that's cultural change. And the definition there is define and advocate the need for a cultural change within the fire service relating to safety, incorporating leadership, management, supervision, and accountability and personal responsibility for all. So that's Initiative 1, cultural change. Life Safety Initiative 2, that's accountability. and enhance the personnel and organizational accountability for health and safety throughout the fire service. So what that says, it's for each person and it's for the agency or the organization to all have a part in this. Life Safety Initiative 3 is risk management. Focus greater attention on the integration of risk management with incident responsibilities at all levels, including strategic, tactical, and planning responsibilities. And then 4, empowerment. All firefighters must be empowered to stop unsafe practices. And when we say all firefighters, the firefighter riding backwards, I almost said riding the tailboard, but that shows my age. All firefighters, from the probationary firefighter to the fire chief, we're all firefighters. We do a different job, we have a different part of this, but we're all firefighters. We all consider ourselves firefighters first, and then our rank second. We're going to talk about 2 types of strategy. We're going to talk about 2 types of strategy. There's defensive attack and offensive attack. And I found a couple of fires that I was on were a pretty good example. And this is a pretty good example of a defensive attack. This is a 10,000 square foot house that was fully involved when we pulled up on scene. Now the fire wasn't through the roof like it is there, but every window had fire in it. This is a defensive attack. There's no sense even trying to be anywhere close to this. The radiated heat is going to keep you back. You can see we're kind of ducking a little bit to stop that, but you're not going to go into that front doorway, or you're not going to go up next to the building. This thing, it's a complete loss. And our goal here was to stop the spread so that it didn't burn down any of the other multi-million-dollar mansions in the area. And on the back side of this was a wildland interface, brush, and we wanted to make sure that it didn't get in there because it was a long arroyo and that it could actually spread. We would have a major catastrophe. So this is a defensive attack. Now, one thing I want to stress here is when you're doing a defensive attack, at some point we're going to knock this fire down. And at some point we're going to need to be able to get closer to the building and put out the fire, because where the roof comes down, where floors come down, you're going to have trap fire. You need to always be cautious of all these walls because they're really compromised, and you want to make sure that they don't fall down on you while you're doing overhaul or even extinguishment. And then an offensive attack. Okay, this is where we're going to go inside and we're going to try to find the seat of the fire. And so we'll take our hand lines, and in conjunction with the truck company we'll try to make an interior attack. Now, when this picture is taken, the truck company's on the roof. They're attempting to cut a hole in the roof to do some vertical ventilation. They're also backing it up with a ventilation fan to try to give them a little bit of room inside that entryway, because they're trying to make it in, but the smoke's and the heat's pushing back. Real good example though of firefighter safety there, and you can see they're all taking an individual responsibility. You see the firefighter in that picture, he or she has all of their personal protective equipment on. They have their turnout coat, their turnout pants, their turnout boots. They've got their face piece on. That hood's covering any potential exposed pieces of the face. They have their helmet on, and they have their gloves. And you can see even the captain's got his equipment on. Everybody does. And on this day, the temperature was about 110 degrees outside. And, it's uncomfortable to wear all that stuff, but you have to have it buttoned up. So again, offensive attack is where we're going to go inside and attempt to find the seat of the fire. We do this probably 90% of the fires. And here we're going to review SAFEOPS and roles. So you have the components: supervision, attitude, fitness, education, organization, and procedures for SAFEOP, and each part that it carries. And then the last one for your standards, regulations for the ops and the parts that it carries. And this wheel here, which is from your book, this shows that this is everybody's responsibility. From the firefighter, which is the individual responder, to the supervisors, to the safety committee, to management, we all have to work together to make the environment as safe as possible. So we're going to talk about these individual responders. Again, that's the most important link to the safety and health program: attitude, teamwork, and active involvement. Individual responders. What you must be is an active team player. Again, don't just assume that that's management's job to take care of that, so I'm not going to worry about that broken equipment. If you see something broken or something that needs repair, you need to be a good communicator. You need to tell somebody. And that's kind of taking a little bit of a leadership role. Is, you're not going to be there telling the engineer or the captain, hey, you need to fix this, but you need to be an example for the other firefighters and be an example for them that, hey, we're all in this together. Be aware of your surroundings. And what I mean by that is just don't go to that apparatus and just check out your equipment. Check out everything. As you walk by that apparatus, does something look out of place? If it is, maybe something's missing. Maybe they had a fire the day before, maybe the shift before, maybe they forgot to connect the hose back onto the discharge. Maybe they forgot to put the nozzle on. You need to check everything and work within your individual abilities. Do things that you can do. If you can't do something, don't try to do something that you're not capable of. And if you're not the nozzle repair person for the department, don't try to fix a nozzle. Make sure that it goes to the right person. We're all in this together. As a responder, an individual responder, you must have a safety attitude. And you're going to see, we're going to stress that. I'm going to stress that you always have to have a safety attitude. Everyone. What you don't want to be is preoccupied. And I kind of touched on that before. Don't be so preoccupied going to check your equipment out that you don't look at the whole rig. You should open every compartment of that apparatus every single day. Don't be complacent. Don't just say, oh, okay, you know what, I know somebody else will fix that. Or, I know this piece of equipment's been broken for a week. Make sure you tell that engineer or that captain every day, hey, you know what, that piece of equipment's still broken. And, if it's a broken piece of equipment, we probably don't want to keep it on our apparatus. And don't be surprised. Don't go to that fire and find out that your mask isn't on your breathing apparatus, or that your bottle is only half full, or, for that matter, has no air in it, that they went to a call the day before and they forgot to fill it. You need to be able, don't be surprised by anything. Don't attempt to do things outside your abilities. And again, I touched on that before. Don't try to fix a nozzle if you don't have that capability and that knowledge. And you always must have an attitude that it can happen to me. You don't want to say, oh, that can't happen to me, because that's what's going to get you killed. If you think that can't happen to you, it can. And one thing that you'll find is that most of the fires that kill firefighters aren't big fires. They're your single, everyday house fire that we go to all the time that, that's what kills and hurts firefighters. It isn't the big fires. Frontline supervision. Commonly the captain, you're that person that supervises the team. And that's even a better title is a team leader. You must ensure that the team members stay together. And, with accountability. And this is really big. You need to tell your crew members that we're going to stay together at an incident. Unless I assign you to do something else, you stay with me. And this is what I expect of you. And a good team leader, a good supervisor, a good captain is someone that they tell their crew ahead of time their expectations and what they want them to do on incidents so that there is no surprise. A really good captain doesn't have to give his crew assignments. They know what to do. Okay, they know that when they pull up on scene that they're going to be expected to pull an 1 3/4 line. They know that they're going to lay a line in from the hydrant. Even if they only have 3 people. In my opinion, you should always get a supply line from the hydrant. But again, that's a little bit of tactics and strategy. And it's really that captain's responsibility to make sure that their people have the proper safety equipment on at all times. Ensure that seat belts are fastened prior to the apparatus moving. Ensures that the proper protective clothing for the job at hand is worn. Whether it be on medicals, that they have eye protection on, that they have gloves on, that they have respiratory protection. It's that captain's responsibility. Now, especially nowadays with the enclosed cabs, it's not always easy for that captain now to look back and make sure that the seatbelts are on. How do you handle that? You make sure that you tell your crew every morning at lineup and roll call that, okay, make sure today that you have on, if we go on a fire, that you have on all your protective clothing, that you have a breathing apparatus ball on, and that prior to us moving the rig, that you need to be seatbelted in, and let us know if you're not. And it's everybody's job. It's the engineer's job to make sure that, okay, that he or she allows the firefighters to get into the cab and have time to put their seatbelts on. The engineer looks back and makes sure that the doors are all closed. Looks over at the captain to make sure the captain's ready to go. But it's everybody's responsibility. Yes, it falls on the frontline captain, but it's everybody's responsibility. That officer is responsible for checking the protective clothing. Make sure that the protective clothing of your firefighters, there is no holes in it. Make sure that they have the equipment. Typically, I know in the Pasadena Fire Department, every Sunday we checked and you were required to show your captain that, okay, he or she would look at your equipment and make sure that it was all there, and again, that you had it. And then it's that officer's job to make sure that maintenance procedures are followed. You have to be hard-headed. You go to the shop and they say, I don't want to fix that today. Well, then, you know what? Maybe you have to take that nice frontline rig out of service, frontline apparatus, and go into reserve that, okay, maybe it doesn't have enclosed cab, or maybe it's not as nice, but you have to switch that over. You can't allow this apparatus to roll with bad brakes or that it can't pump properly because you're just asking for it. Supervisors, you're the link between management and individual responders. You're the glue that holds this together. In my opinion, the most important job on the fire department is that captain, because that captain sees what goes on every day in their station, and the management, whether it be a BC or someone else, doesn't see that. That is the main link there. And the supervisors have to pay attention. You want them to have the necessary mix of experience and education. So what are we saying there? Yeah, it's desirable to have experience, but you also should have education. Now, education may not necessarily mean having a doctorate in firefighting safety, and I'm being facetious there. But what it means is that you need to take classes on a regular basis, especially the continuing educations. Take California State Firefighter classes from the State Fire Marshal's office, and take things that are out of your comfort zone. So if your comfort zone is that, hey, I'm really good at responding on fires and stuff, but I'm not a USAR person, well, then go take those classes, because the more knowledge that you have will make you that better captain, that you'll be able to see things that other not as educated personnel may not be able to see. And then, you need to be able to recognize dangers inherent in the occupation. You need to have that stuff in your head that when you go in that scene that you can kind of do a real quick look and be able to pick up the wires down, or where the fire is, or where you want your other companies to go. Now again, that comes with experience above and education. You've got to put those pictures in your brain, and like we say, you need to have that information in your hard drive or your brain, because you need to be able to pull that up at any time. And then you must be able to apply the knowledge and take responsibility for the crew. And sometimes this is tough. You need to be responsible, and you need to stop your personnel from doing something and explain to them later after and say why you stopped them, or you need to have them do things that they may not feel comfortable with, but you have to have that knowledge. And you have to, afterwards, when you have your after action, then you can review that and say, hey, this is what I saw and this is why we did these tactics. And they'll appreciate that. Management, okay, and that's emergency service management. That's a broad term. It could be the fire EMS chief or the director of emergency services. You have many roles in the safety and health program. Primarily, it's making sure that things get done. You must give the safety program priority in terms of support, both financial and administrative. And you must develop the organization's safety policy. Incident commander. This is the highest level of incident management system, IMS. It's your job to ensure safety at the incident. Now, some people would say, well, how can an incident commander do that if they're not inside the structure? And let me stop right there and say that an incident commander does not belong in the structure, whether on the exterior of it or the interior. You don't belong there. You belong out on the street, and typically for us in California, that's with a Suburban or some type of vehicle like that, where we're out there. We have our computers with us, we have our radios, and you need to be able to monitor everything. Specifically on an incident, you may have to listen to 3 or 4 channels, especially after the RIC team is there. But it's your job to ensure safety. And that by doing that, you can assign a safety officer, and you need to make sure that the crews, that their tactics and their strategy and goals are in line with what you need. And part of that is to follow safety. It's your job whether to say, hey, this is going to be a defensive fire or an offensive fire. And while I didn't say it earlier, a fire can go from offensive to defensive to offensive again. And that's pretty common. You may have this fire that starts with a little bedroom fire, where that fire now spreads up into the attic and is burning over the crews. And if it gets out of control, it's up to the incident commander to pull these people out, go defensive, and then at some point, if it's still safe with the structure, and you're going to check with your captains, then we can go back offensive. And again, that's a risk-benefit analysis. I'm going to evaluate the risk, and if it gets too great, then I'm pulling my people out, and I'm going to go to defensive and then go back to offensive. That incident commander should have a knowledge of fire dynamics, building construction, and accepted tactics. I need to know tactics and strategy real well. And typically that's why most departments you have to have on quite a few years to be a battalion chief, and it's based on that experience along with other things. Safety program manager. Most departments have someone that's assigned to safety, and a lot of times it's tied in with training. And for instance, when I was the training and safety battalion chief for the Pasadena Fire Department, and I had both programs. I oversaw the programs. I had to make sure that they were effective. Again, I had to have sufficient experience to do that. I had to have risk management principles. And then there's always a cost of everything. And we'd like to say, oh yeah, we're all for safety, but again, there is a cost. You can't go spend $1 million because it'll make things safer. Yes, we'd like to, but there just isn't that kind of money going around. And then we need to have a hand in emergency service operations. Okay, we need to be able to evaluate the tactics and strategy that occurs and make sure that we are doing after action reviews. And again, everyone has to know their roles and responsibilities, from the safety manager to the firefighter. Now, the incident safety officer. You have to have knowledge of the type of incident at hand. And I've talked about that in previous videos. We kind of looked down below that there's fire, EMS, hazardous materials, and technical rescue. If you're that incident safety officer, you have to have knowledge of hazardous materials, and you have to have the training of the highest level that's there. So most hazmat teams, if we'll say that when Pasadena does not have its own hazmat team, we get a hazmat teams from Burbank and Glendale Fire Department. Well, if they're sending their teams over, they're going to send over a chief officer who has hazmat technician training, and that person is going to be the hazmat safety officer. I might have an overall incident safety officer, but they're not going to be responsible for the hazmat situation. So they have to have that role. So fires, we'll say they're probably the simplest, because most of the people you're going to put in there are going to be a captain or a chief officer, and they've had that experience, and they're going to get that assignment based on their experience. EMS, most people feel comfortable being a safety officer there because anywhere from 70% to 75% of our calls are EMS, so most people have experience there. And again, technical rescue. It doesn't mean no good to choose a captain that has no technical rescue training or a chief officer to be the safety officer. I need to find someone that has that kind of training. And this is an example of an incident safety officer worksheet. Each department has their own specific, but you want to make sure that at the scene that the traffic's controlled, utilities are handled. Is there any hazardous materials? Vehicles, are they stabilized? Are they structural stability in the structure? Did they hit something? Is there cargo in them? Is there fuel on the ground? Is there an incident management system in operation? Is there fire suppression support? Is there extrication? And anything else I want to add? And then, again, personnel. Is there adequate personnel? Do they have the proper training? Do they have the proper PPE? Is there an accountability section there? Which means, is there a RIC company there? And is there rehab? And it could be any of these things plus more. Ideally, you make a site sketch. The reason we have that is so when we review the incident, that we have an idea of what we saw wrong and what we saw that was good. We can show a diagram with a sketch. Now, we talked about a lot of these things here, and this is just for vehicle accidents here, but this doesn't mean that the safety officer is doing any tactics and strategy. That isn't the point. That's for the incident commander. This is for, you're just going to make sure that certain safety things, if you see things that need to be addressed, your communication is to that incident commander. It isn't to the personnel there. Unless it's something that's going to cause somebody to lose their life, then you can stop those actions. But most of the time, you're going to radio the incident commander, and the people that are on the radio are going to hear it, and then hopefully they'll stop their unsafe tactics. Then most departments have a safety committee. And ideally, you involve all levels of employees. So you would have a firefighter in there, you would have an engineer in there, a captain in there, a battalion chief, and then maybe somebody from EMS, even though they may not be they're a separate division, but they're still part of the department. You have them there. And you kind of want everybody represented from all levels and divisions. We should meet on a regular basis, typically once a month. You should have minutes, and you should publish those minutes. Okay, so that not only that the people that are involved in the committee know, but these should be distributed to everybody in the department. And the goal of your committee is, do we have something that we need to redo a policy? Maybe we're doing something that our policy says for us to do, but maybe that policy was written 20 years ago when you were allowed to ride on tailboards and we didn't have enclosed cabs or whatever it may be, but we need to be able to change it. And then they need to make recommendations to senior management. So this committee will send up recommendations, and senior management usually includes battalion chiefs, assistant chiefs, and the chief, and they usually meet on a weekly or bi-weekly schedule, and in that way they can discuss these kind of things. So summary, each member of the organization has a role in safety and health. Their role should be specified with the defined responsibilities so that everybody knows what their responsibilities in safety is. The safety program manager is a nucleus of all this, the person that pulls it all together. Again, the incident commander plays a vital role because he or she is going to be the one that selects strategy and tactics for a given situation. And he or she has to be the person that says, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't. Now, again, you're going to be doing that from the information you receive from your captains, and you have to have that information. And again, the safety committee is an extension of the organization membership and safety manager.